Okay, here they come. Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Just as a reminder, please try to mute yourself as you're coming in so we don't have too much background audio. Gonna let us all get situated. We have a couple more people joining us before I get us going. And again, for those who just joined, please don't forget to mute yourself. I'm seeing a couple familiar faces that I saw earlier. Welcome
And
back.
I see some familiar faces
Well,
too.
look at that.
It's great.
Okay, so I'm going to keep admitting people as we start,
Start.
but I'm going to go ahead and say our intro. So, everyone, welcome to our free sample online classes sponsored by Il Chiostro. Some of you already know who Il Chiostro is, but others are new. So, briefly, I would just like to talk a little bit about our organization. We organize both online and in-person art workshops, mostly in Italy, and we've been around since 1995, helping close to 200 instructors plan and organize and run creative and inspiring workshops in our opinion, the most beautiful country in the world, Italy. So, our 2 p.m. class, today's class is ink and watercolor sketching from distant travels to your own backyard with Emily Passman. Emily is a painter of oils and acrylics, known for her expressive loose style. She works from observation both in studio and plein air and describes her work as a reaction to the subject as opposed to a rendering. In addition to teaching oil and acrylic techniques, she encourages and teaches students to sketch. She says daily sketching is a great way to heighten one's ability to see and is important to incorporate into one's painting process. Her work is in galleries in New England and private collections internationally. After earning both a fine arts degree and a master's in education, she had a successful career as an educator and a graphic designer. She teaches privately in her barn studio and at various museums, educational venues near Boston. So, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Emily.
Hi, everyone. I'm not in Boston now. I happen to be in sunny, very warm today, Palm Springs. Very beautiful here. It's a really nice place to spend the winter. And I have a rental apartment, and that's why there's a bar behind me. It's not mine. It's just
Oh, Emily, I think you got muted. If you just want to unmute yourself really quick.
sorry about that.
No worries.
Um, I don't know what you heard, but
Uh,
I'm from Boston, Lexington, Massachusetts, to be exact, and I have a studio in a barn behind my house. And as part of my slideshow, I can show you. I'm showing you a picture of my studio. Um, I'm in a rental apartment in Palm Springs, beautiful, sunny, warm Palm Springs. It's a lovely place to spend a couple of months. I'll be here January and February, and and then head home and do open studios and get back into my whole art community back there, which picks up fast in the spring. So I'm happy to miss some of the weather there right now. We rented out our house, and here we are. So it's great. And so the format for today is that I have 1 hour and I'm going to show you a slideshow of some of my work. And some of the slides are small videos. And then I'm going to, well, first I'll show you about my materials. One of the things about sketching with ink and watercolor is the smaller amount that you have to carry around with you if you're sketching plein air or even at your dining room table. The fewer items, the better. And so I'm going to be using my palette. This is doesn't have to be this many colors. Mine happens to be this many colors. Um, but you could get away with a very small travel size watercolor kit. It's more about the dab of color than it is about mixing colors or making gradations or this isn't a, I don't use watercolor in a method, traditional watercolor. Um, I use it as a technique that I put together with my ink. So it's not traditional watercolor. I use different pens, and I'm going to tell you about these different pens because this one happens to be waterproof, which means when I sketch with it and then add watercolor, it will not smudge. And this is a cartridge-based ink. I just have to change the cartridge. This is called a platinum carbon ink pen. I love this. I love it because the ink it will not smudge. I also love this one because the ink does smudge. So when I'm just out in the field, sometimes I can get away with my this is all I brought yesterday with me, which to sketch something that you'll see in the slideshow. So it was just my water that I could dip the brush into and pull from the lines that I made with this. Um, and then, of course, you have disposable markers, which are just like Sharpies, which are also waterproof. When I make the line and I add watercolor or just water, these will not smudge. There's no reason I would add water to these because it won't smudge. With these, the whole reason that I like to use these is that the line does not die. It stays alive and I can use it as a wash. Um, Today I'm going to be using for my demo, I'm going to be using this photograph, which is just some buildings and some people in Venice. And I think I just want to change this. Oh yeah, it's on the MacBook here. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that my camera was on correctly.
And
Um,
really quickly, Emily, we have some
yes,
questions.
yeah.
So we have a question from someone that says, do you ever use water brushes?
Oh, yes, I do. I have a water brush right here. I get very, very frustrated and angry at my watercolor water brushes because sometimes they don't. The idea with these is that the well is water that you put in, or you can fill it with an ink wash also. But yes, you fill this with water, and it's very squeezable. It's very soft. And when you turn it upside down. This one's working well now. You can see that it's dripping. And so I can absolutely use this with my Lamy pen. Somebody asked, I think, what the brand of this. This is a Lamy pen, Lamy, and it looks very much like a traditional um, ink nib pen, but it is also cartridge. And you can get the cartridges online. And there are different widths of the tips, and they really work very well. I also just want to say that if you use a brush that's really, really teeny tiny, and I'll show you this when I do the demo, you use a teeny tiny brush, and just to show you how small this is, like here's this and here's it. It's a really, really thin brush. You can make lines with this that are very, very fine. You could do crosshatch. I use this a lot for when I'm signing my name on some like a painting. If I want to use just the teeniest line, I love this brush. And you do get attached to your brushes, but my suggestion is to only get attached to a few of them. So these are the three that I'm mostly attached to. This one is a number, there's some paint on it. It's a number three Artist Loft Vienna. And this is, sometimes I use, uh, I can't remember the brand, but these are all three different brands. You just have to go and see what feels right to you. I like brushes that are kind of bouncy. I don't like very floppy brushes. If I push it, I want it to bounce back. I want it to kind of fight with the paper. Okay. Any other questions about materials
Uh,
before I start?
I think you answered most of them. Someone asked about what are the pens that are not water fast? I think that was Elizabeth. I believe she meant waterproof, but
Yeah,
I
it's
just want to
another
make
way of
sure.
saying that. The
Okay.
pens that are not
Lamy
waterproof
3509.
are these Lamys, Lamy, Lamy. Um, I love them, and I'm going to demonstrate. And you'll also see in this slideshow some of the small videos I'm using the Lamy.
We also have a
Um,
question about the choice of paper, hot or
oh,
cold press.
well, I like to use cold press. Cold press has a little bit more of a tooth. Hot press is very smooth. Hot press is really hot press would be like a piece of Bristol board or something that's very, very smooth and it takes ink beautifully, but I like the feeling. There's no right or wrong. Um, there is right or wrong in terms of the weight of the paper. I wouldn't, for a watercolor or a sketch pad, I would not want to use anything smaller than the number 140. A 140 cold press is what I like. 300 is heavier and it's really got some beautiful heft to it. But any like a 90 would not take water very well. Little bits of water on a 90-pound watercolor paper is fine, but anything lower than that, I just think um, you certainly wouldn't want to use newsprint or anything like that.
Perfect. I think those were all
Okay.
of our questions on the materials. Again, everyone, if you have questions, just put them into the chat and I'll read them out for Emily to hear.
Yeah, and I'm going to go to my um, slideshow and let's start with the first one. So this first slide is, I just want to move this out of the way. This is my studio at home. This is in a barn behind my house. And you see my lovely dog on the couch. She was 14 and a half, and we had to say goodbye to her in September. And this is where she loved to be. She and I, this was our happy place. And her name was Eva, and I had to include her in this slideshow. And this is sort of where I'm working right now. I've got the dirt, actually my watercolor, uh, the water is much cleaner now. That was last night. And as I was doing a sketch of Venice. And there's Eva. And this is watercolor and pen and ink. I did a lot of drawings as she got older. Venezia. And this is a little video. This is sped up. Can you hear me okay while this is going? Okay. This is
Yes.
sped up because what I want to really show is the treatment, the style of the lines that I use. The style of the lines is it's a broken line. It's responding to my subject as opposed to trying to render it like a botanical illustration. So I'm just showing, I mean, it's not that it's sped up all that much. I do a lot of very quick drawing. I find that it helps me to connect with my subject. This is it's called a butterfly weed, and I have lots and lots of it growing at home. So there's a lot of broken lines. Here I'm using a smaller watercolor set that I had, and it's like I grab the watercolor and I just touch the paper with it, as opposed to really studying an exactness. And this was here in Morongo Canyon, where it was very, very bright end of day light. So I had a little problem with the shadow when I put that there. But I just wanted to show the style of line and how I was, and this is just with ink. This is just the Lamy pen. So I have no ink with me. I have just this Lamy pen. I've drawn the line. Very responsive to what I was looking at, as opposed to studying it in any kind of botanical way. It's as if the object and my arm or the object and my eye and the arm and my hand and the tool and the paper all work together, and it becomes a quite a meditative time. If there are leaves that are overlapping, I find that one mass that might stand in for 5 or 6 leaves. And after this, I might go back in. Once this dries, I can go back in with my Lamy and draw right on top to find the veins in the leaves or to find some of the information in those little clusters of flowers. and I don't know what this is called, but it's all over the place. If any of you are from the desert here, you might tell me what this is called. Maybe Lisa knows. I don't know. But here I'm trying to get the essence of the fullness of that bud, of that flower. And then I go back later. See, I'm showing you that I'm trying to get, and it's not even dry yet. I'm going back in with the Lamy and I'm just touching it and pulling it around to get that darkness, to get that feeling of the fullness of all of those different petals. It's just a touch, just a touch. And that's why I say this is not traditional watercolor. Well, this isn't watercolor at all. This is just the ink, but it's the same exact technique that I use if I have dipped into it, the well of paint in my palette.
And Emily,
Okay,
someone
so
asked that they see a brush in the video. Is that just a wet one spreading the ink from the pen line?
that is just, there is no ink, just water and pulling the line from the drawing. Did that answer the question?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes, we have a thumbs up.
Okay. Nope, that's what's so cool about this Lamy pen. I just love them. But remember, anytime you go back and get wet water on this page, it's going to run. It's never, I mean, I suppose you could spray it or fix it. I don't know. I've never done anything like that. Okay, I'm going to move on. Um, I think this was supposed to have come first. This is the line. So I just want to say something because this is important when it comes to sketching something like in a landscape. When I'm looking at something like this and I start sketching it, I'm first concerned with my ratios, the length of something, the width of something, and it's almost like I create a dot to dot for myself. I'm going and I'm finding places. So in the landscape, it might be the corner of a building or the roof of a building or the height of a person. Wasn't paying too much attention to where my camera was going there. So I'm looking very hard here at the feeling of how much space between this cluster of leaves and this cluster of leaves. And the first thing I did was find the entire length of the branch. Because if you just pay attention to the very small detail when you start painting or drawing, you won't have a sense of where it's landing on your page. So I want to get a sense of the height of it, the width of it, and then start working smaller details with it. So that one came before the other one. And this is just, a lot of sketching is just playing around. And when I'm going to be in Italy with sketchers, we're going to be doing a lot of just sitting and looking at our landscape and playing around with our materials, not worrying about exactness. One of the fun things about working with a sketchbook is trying stuff out, is really being loose, trying out the materials. Maybe this will work, maybe that will work. And there's a lot of duds. And you just leave them in there because the sketchbook itself is a progression, it's a chronological um, record of where you've gone visually. Um, I also will talk today about drawing people, and my demo is going to be attempting to draw these people in Venice. So here, this is called Morro Rock. It's on the California coast, and I really wanted to get the sense of how small these people looked compared to that rock. And this is with watercolor, and it's painted right on the beach. And this is another place near there. I forget what it's called. And here, I don't, maybe I have a close-up of this, but I tried to get the lines in here of this beautiful rock.
And Emily, someone asked if it's
Yeah.
cotton paper.
Cotton, cotton. This is, sometimes it's a moleskin. I don't think that one's a moleskin, but I don't know if it's cotton. Probably. If I do try to buy the good quality watercolor paper. So I think that one, Might have, I really don't know. Sorry.
Okay.
Don't know if it's cotton or not.
And then
This is
some,
just an example. Sorry,
no
what did you
worries.
say?
We had two more actually. So someone mentioned it was maybe a burrow brush or asking about a burrow brush. Is that something that you use?
How do you spell that?
Burrobush.
I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry.
No,
Sorry.
no worries. And then another question said, is there any reason to be concerned using my good watercolor brushes with ink?
Very good question. I used to care. I I used to keep ink brushes separate. It was a big hassle. I got lost which one were my watercolor brushes, which were my ink brushes. And I wash them differently because ink is much more permanent and you don't want it to stay in the ferrule, down here, this part of the brush. But I let go of caring because I go back and forth and back and forth. I like, for example, this one, I might have gone and put a little dab of orange paint for the sunlight hitting this chimney, and then I might have gone to reiterate something about some line that I saw in the chimney. So I brought the ink. Yeah, no, the answer is I don't, I just like to wash them with soap in the palm of my hand really, really well after use. So I'm not buying $200 brushes. So
Oh,
yeah.
and I got a good clarification. I read it a bit wrong. It's the burrow bush. They were suggesting that it might be the plant or flower from your previous,
Oh,
or an, I'm sorry if I'm going to butcher this, but Ambrosia dumosa.
okay.
So that I think that was
Good.
the
So that will
suggestion.
be in the chat and I can look at that. I'm
Yes.
very often drawing plants that I have no idea what their names are.
There you go.
Thank you. And I'll check that out in the chat. And this is just an example of hatch lines. These little marks right here are places where my eye has landed on something. This is probably in New England, somewhere on, in some kind of seaside place where there, some sort of harbor or boat place. And there's always a zillion things that your eye lands on. So each time I've touched the canvas or touched the paper with my pen, it's just to say I see something there. And this is from the Lick Observatory in California, in the Bay Area. Um, I want you to notice the people because they're not drawn anatomically correct, but one of the biggest mistakes I think sketchers do is make heads too big, and the larger the head, the younger the person will look. If there's a large head, it will look like a toddler because they look like aliens. And this is in Rockport, Massachusetts. I'm just showing the scene with the sketch. And there's the sketch. Again, the people are just dabs of shape. There's a girth, there's a wideness around the hips and the shoulders. And then if you start drawing the shape of the feet, if you don't actually see the shape of the feet, it will they look like clowns. So small head, small feet. And this is just a cluster of people. And then, especially when we're in Venice and we're drawing groups of people in St. Mark's Square or something, um, we are going to find a shape that stands in for 12 people before we start looking at this person's head, shoulder, hips, feet. We find shapes. And it's also important, and I'm just going to use my annotation here. I talked about finding, so if I were sitting at in this landscape right now, the first thing I'd want to do, whoops, that's too thick. I want to use this one. First thing I'd want to do is find these, not draw them in like this, but to take note of this corner, this corner. Where does this hit? Where does this hit? What height are the heads of the people? What place on my paper would the feet of the people land? What's the entirety of this shape of groups of people versus this shape. This is the very, very general um, first look of doing a sketch of a street scene, because now we have a sense of the height of the doors. And also, this is a good way for me to establish the perspective. It's all 1 point perspective here. All this is the would be the vanishing point here. But I don't really get into talking about perspective, but visually, yes, to understand perspective is important, but to understand 1 point perspective versus 2 point perspective and vanishing points and horizon lines, that's not as important to me. But understanding it visually and being able to see where's the height of this person versus the height of this roof? Where does this car come out? How much space is there between the car and the person? It's as an example. And there's one of my students sketching. I think the feet are too big, but it's just a sketch in a sketchbook. So sitting in a park and looking at people and practice, 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 just drawing them. It's not like this dog was as large as this person. I was just looking around. Probably after I drew this person, they left. This dog probably got up and walked away. But you're just finding within the page lots of different scenes as you're looking around. Okay. More people. Finding with the wash one shape that stands in for all the darks. I mean, this is something I do with my painting also, finding these masses before the little details. Just playing. This stuff is just, playful areas in the sketchbook. They're not necessarily goodies. The reason that I'm showing this one, I like, if you imagine taking out all the ink lines, the watercolor does kind of stand in for itself, but it wouldn't be as interesting because some of the detail, and when I say detail, I mean, for example, these lines here that tell the story of this stalk, or these lines here, these hash lines that tell the story of the grass. Um, all of that has to be done in conjunction with the stain of the watercolor for it to have this sensibility to it. This one, I think I used brown ink, and this is on Martha's Vineyard, an island in Massachusetts. Two scenes of the same place, just quick, trying to get that sense of the wind and everything moving so quickly. This is an example of just materials and the playing, and I think this is the same page. Yeah, this is the same page, and I just want to stress this type of play. And the first day in Italy, we're going to be doing a lot of this. A lot of play with wash and line.
And Emily, we have a few questions. Are these all
Sure.
done with the Lamy pen?
No, some of them, oh, you know what? I forgot to mention, and I do want to mention that the traditional, I'm just going to stop sharing just for a second. Traditional, some of them are done with traditional ink nibs and pens. So here's my box of nibs. These are the real McCoy. So these get put into a pen. You dip this into the bottle of ink. There's a tip that actually opens up to allow the ink to flow down. And so sometimes I use that. Certainly not as much for travel. That would be something that I would have in one place. Sometimes it's the permanent, and sometimes it's just a Sharpie. It's hard sometimes to bring everything, and so I don't know. I don't know
Mm.
looking back exactly what I was using.
And
But
would
I
you
think this was a permanent. Looking at this, I think this was a permanent ink pen of some kind because I don't see that the watercolor was pulling out the line of my watercolor. I mean, it doesn't look like the watercolor's pulling out the line of my ink pen.
And is it ever appropriate to use the ink pen after using the watercolor?
100%, but it's harder if the watercolor is still wet. But going back in, absolutely go back in and like I could go back into this and put other detail in here. Going in and doing ink line on top of dry watercolor, great idea. Um, this is I do a lot of this at home. It's sort of like the after the farmer's market series.
And when do you choose to use, or when do you choose gouache?
Gouache,
Gouache, excuse me,
gouache
everyone.
versus watercolor.
Yes, I believe.
I hardly ever use gouache. Gouache is a very it's an opaque watercolor. It's still water based, but it's very opaque as opposed to a transparent like watercolor. So I hardly ever use gouache, but I love it. It's a wonderful um, medium.
Yeah, I'm learning things too.
That's after the farmer's market too. And this about doing shadows like this. At the beginning, when you try shadows, sometimes they get too dark and they look like other objects. You want your shadow to almost be invisible and only nameable after you figure out or think about, well, this part is landing on the paper and this part might be landing on the paper. And so where these points land on the table or wherever this garlic is, that's where the shadow derives from. And so you want your shadow to be really, really smoky and not very um, strong. And same thing with shadows like under the eaves of buildings and things like that. And this is in Italy somewhere, and I don't remember exactly where. This one I think is really fun to do. So here, imagine on my paper before any ink line, I just even before any of this more pigmented piece of watercolor, it was just a wash that went from light green to light yellow to light blue. And I just made that within this frame and then went back in. And so the whole feeling of this town is really just from this negative space. And I think that that's a fun technique.
We had a question of, were the vegetables ink first, then watercolor?
That both back and forth. I always work back and forth and back. And I'm going to show you that when I do the demo, how I work back and forth.
And do you use paint or ink for soft shadows?
If I'm just using ink, I'll use ink. But if I have watercolor, I'll use watercolor for the soft shadows.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Um, this is scenes from a train. Now, this one also, um, oh no, this is bus, I guess. Drawing from a train is a perfect, okay. So this is from the train. Drawing from a train or even from a car, if you're not the driver, is really, really a great exercise because you grab a tree and then you draw the tree and you look up and the tree's gone. It's a mile back down the road and you see a fence and you grab the fence and then you grab the shape of a structure and that goes away and then you find the next one and it all becomes a little scene and it's so much fun. So this one I made these little watercolor backgrounds before I started sketching, knowing that I was getting on this train or this bus and doing that. This is what I've done a few times is to make the page of these colors and then go on my way. So I have no idea at the beginning of the day what's going to land on these colors. And that's really fun. San Gimignano, Rockport, no, Gloucester, Massachusetts. We're all over the place here. This is Zion, Swans Island in Maine. And just, the sailboat, this one in particular, if I were to get any more detailed with that, the the whole sketch would have been around, if this was the first place I looked. I have no idea if it was, but um, you want everything to sort of have the same level of interest in your sketch. Otherwise, it doesn't hang together. Camden, Maine. And this also, there was a lot of wash in here that didn't come together and have form until I went back in for the sketch, with the ink. And then I could go back and forth. See, because I probably wanted, I don't know what I went back in and added later, but I might have gone back in and added a shadow under the umbrella, or I might have added um, some more outline to solidify some form. This is a long time ago. Again, the people are, there's always the question after coming away doing a sketch like this, was I lazy, or was I daring to be simple? It's like one or the other. But I do think it's about daring to simplify. And this is a shipyard in Provincetown, Massachusetts. And this one's mostly about this shadow is the strength of this sketch. This shadow, which is a wash of ink, is the strength of the sketch because if you took away all the dark black ink lines, I think you'd still have that structure of the building. And I'm sure we'll see lots of urns and things like that. It doesn't have to always be a huge scene in its entirety. The reason that I've taken this little section right here is this section right here. And I just wanted to zoom in on just so you can see how I grab the shape of this tulip. There are broken lines and some areas that don't have ink except for the shadow. So I like to go back in and zoom in and get a sense of what was I responding to? And it really is not what was I studying and drawing, what was I responding to? Because even in my responsiveness, it's a seeing exercise. Mostly it's a seeing exercise.
And Emily, we had a question. If you prepare the wash background first and don't know
Mhm.
what it will land on, how do you decide where to place the various colored washes?
I don't, okay, that's the end of the slideshow. I don't, should I remove this spotlight? I don't prepare washes when I sketch. This is the difference, I think, between traditional fine watercolor and using watercolor to add dabs of color um, back and forth with ink to build a sketch. And I'm going in this demo, I'm going to explain that to you. And I also just want to any other questions before I turn the camera toward what I'm going to demonstrate? Um, okay, I'm going to go to camera and all right. So what I have here, I guess it's not backwards. Okay, good. Um, I have just a small section of a scene in Venice. And the reason I make a black and white copy of it is to really get a sense of the values, the darks and the lights, because that's mostly that in conjunction with um, the division of space for the entirety of the sketch are the two most important things. So when I I made a separate copy of this in black and white so I could demonstrate to you my thinking. I don't necessarily do this, but this is how I'm thinking. Remember, when you're looking out at the world, you have buildings and you have faraway hills and there's so much out there. And then you have this space where you want to do a sketch. So bringing that large world down into onto this piece of paper is my challenge. So one of the things that I like to do is to think about, and I guess for this particular sketch, what I'll do is I'll give myself the same parameter. I'm going to draw um, sort of the same ratio. It's a little bit taller than a square. And I like to have a little straight edge with me also. Okay. I don't necessarily, what I'm going to do right now, I don't necessarily do when I'm out there drawing because I've done it a lot and but I'm just sort of breaking down my thinking for you. So, um, I have this one building here and then there's another one here. There's all kinds of major, um, first glance. Actually, I'm going to do it right on here, right on here. So this is how I think. Think, oh, well, the angle of where these people are standing is kind of like that. And they're going away in space. So that's the space where these people are going to reside. And then there's, of course, there's I'm making the four walls here. This is this is sort of just a method of bringing the large world down into the sketchbook. And then, so this is instead of just having your scene and going in and starting to draw a person, for example, because if you make the person this large, the other information in your scene isn't going to show up. So this is just a way of breaking apart the world that you're actually looking at. So then there's this angle of this building, and there's the edge of this building. There's this line, which is where the top of these windows will come. There's this, which is all in perspective. The closer I get to my eye height, the flatter the line, because that's the way perspective works. If something's at your eye height, it's going to be a flat line. Like this is about at my eye height, so it's going to be flatter. Um, and then, of course, there's going to be other information. There's going to be the angle of this window that I look at. There's the angle of this window. And there's actually the edge, I believe there's I had them print this much lighter because I wanted to see the other I wanted to see things more clearly. I think the edge of that building is there. So there's some pieces of information that are important to get in here. So then I would start to, and I'm going to do this without the ruler. This is more natural for me to do this. And so it's like a dot to dot. So I think, okay, well, this is about, like a fourth. So I'm going to start with that. And then there's going to be this angle, and I'm looking at where this is. And this is basically the center of my field of vision here. So it goes about here. And then here's about where these people land. And I'm just going to make some sense of this angle. So it doesn't look like anything at first, but I'm creating a scaffolding for where my drawing is going. Um, and it also will help me stay much, much looser in terms of not making full lines, because I find if I just go in and start making full lines of things, it's going to be kind of the death of the openness and the immediacy of my drawing. And then there's something here and it goes kind of down like that. And I'm using the Lamy pen. So I'll use this one so that when I go, I'll use the platinum carbon ink pen so that when I go to my watercolor, it will be It won't run. And then there's this angle of this, and then I do see another angle of that um, roof. And in this view, I have the window here, and I'm not going to worry right now about making the shutters and this and that. I'm really getting the placement of things. And then there are these windows here. I just have the sense of those. And then over here, we had the arches. And, a lot of times I will look and think, well, if I come straight over, what does it hit? Where does that hit here? And if I'm way off, I might adjust. If I'm a little off, doesn't matter. It's a sketch. I'm not making a photograph. So here's that line where these windows are going to hit. And then there's the bottom one, which is a little bit flatter because it's more at my eye height. But I don't want to do too much before I start getting a sense of the shape of these people. So here's where the people were. This is the top of this here. So I'm just kind of making the map, and then here's where the people's feet are. So now in looking at these people, this is hard for me, especially while I'm talking and on camera. I'm not just sitting on a stool in the middle of Venice. So I'm going to just start with this guy over here. And I'm looking mostly at him rather than thinking about what I'm doing. I'm really looking at him. And then I'm looking at this cluster. I'm not looking at this person, this person, this person, this person. I'm looking at a cluster here. I'm looking at this arm that's coming out here, and I'm looking at this leg, crisscross kind of. And then there's another person back there, and there's another one here. And put in some of the feeling of the clothing. It does definitely helps. Um, and then there's this woman here with the black hair and this cape. Nice shape. I'm not this is not my forte, but it's going to be necessary in Venice for sure. Um, and I love doing it, but I'd rather be drawing flowers. The buildings, I mean, I wouldn't rather be drawing flowers. It's just easier for me. You know what it is? People are less forgiving. Everything has to feel like a person. With nature, I find it's much more forgiving in terms of where where a branch lands. You can't kind of just have a head land wherever you want. It has to read correctly to some degree. But that's about as detailed as I think that I need this before I'm going to go in and use some watercolor. So when I say that I don't worry about the wash, I'm looking at, for example, I'm going to take the color one now. I don't think I'm going to make this as red. I don't know. That's may not be my thing. But I'm just going to look at making this building have some facade of, so I'm going to take a little bit of yellow, a little bit of orange. I don't know if this is showing up very well. Little yellow, little orange. So I'm not mixing here. I don't mix on my palette. I'm bringing that wash right here. It's a little too bright. I'm going to bring a little bit more water. Notice my ink line stays right where I put it because it's not the Lamy. It was the other one. Need a little bit more. I come back in, grab something slightly different. I like to just play up with my color and don't worry that it's different than quote reality. Remember, I did this one with my Lamy, so that one's spreading a little bit.
And do
That's
you
okay.
mind explaining again what are the Lamy pens?
Yes, the Lamy is the one that is this one that is non-waterproof. So if I'm going to show you right here, I'm going to draw, well, you'll see it if I just touch this wet area, it will it will spread around. And when I go in with this, it's non-waterproof. The ink will come alive again once I touch it. I'm going to take the small brush now, and I'm going to go in and use some of my dark colors. Um, I'm grabbing some sepia. I'm grabbing a little bit of blue. I'm grabbing a little bit of brown. And I'm going to start looking at it. Didn't get as dark as I want. Okay, so go back in, grab a little bit, touch, just touch. And this guy, here's this. Goes for some.
And do you mind giving the exact spelling of like Lamy
Yes,
pen?
it's Lamy, the Lamy pen. So now I'm determined to continue to find this shape and not worry about getting them to look like separate people, but to get it to look like a cluster of people walking down the street, because that's what they are. They're strangers, but they're overlapping. Now I'm going in for a little bit of, give this guy some lighter pants on, but then I have some dark blue here.
And then Emily, just giving you a time check. We have about 10 minutes left.
Okay. Her, she's got a light colored something or other on, like a shawl. Um, so I'm going to leave that. And this is where I really like to start paying attention to my, and I don't like to call it negative space, but I'm looking at this door beyond her. And that's going to help draw her because now, and it's going to help draw him because as soon as I put that in, and later on I can go back in and put more detail in, I can, do what I want to that door, but all of a sudden, that is what helped to draw her because it showed you the darkness against the light. Oh, and I was going to show you what to do with this very, very thin brush. And that is, I got the thin brush now. And let's see, I think I want to use it to show some of the detail of the architecture.
And Emily, what size skinny brush are you using?
Oh, this is a really skinny brush. This is 2/0 Golden Maple. That's the name of the brand of this, Golden Maple. And I bought it as a set. And it's nice because it has this flat edge here, so it won't roll. And so it's 2/0. Can you see that?
Yes, we can see it. A
Two over
little. We
zero
can see the
golden
number.
maple. So it's the golden maple, it's a series, and I bought a bunch of them together, and I really, really like them.
And they were also asking the size of the brush, the one before this as well.
This one is,
That one we
this
can't.
one is called a number four La something, but it looks like it's I've worn it off. And then it says 7,000 round. I don't know. I apologize. But they're all considered rounds as opposed to flats. Um, so now I'm going in with the really skinny one to make some of the information in the details. I mean, in the architecture.
And I might roll off some more questions as you work. We had a
Sure.
couple, so I just want to make sure we catch up before we run out of time.
Yep.
Someone said, how do you avoid the colors in the palette getting muddy and mixed when you pull from different colors with the same brush?
Good question. I'm going to turn the camera off now. Okay. Um, I know it was hard to see this when they don't get muddy because I'm not mixing here. Like I do have a cover to this. It actually fell off. The hinge here broke. So the cover works as a mixing space. When I'm working small like this is a really small sketch. Is it clear enough?
We
Why
can
is it?
see it's just because your background's blurring, but we can see the size compare like on
Okay.
the screen.
So
Yeah.
it's a small sketch, and I think that I don't it's the fewer brush marks, the less mud you'll get. Mud does not come from the wrong colors. There's no such thing as a muddy color. No such thing. Mud is a factor of time spent with your brush on the page.
Okay.
Time over brushy brush marks. That's what causes mud. So I get in and I get out. You'll notice I picked up it has to do with really coming to terms with exactly how much pigment and water you grab from here and put on your paper and then get out. So get in and get out with watercolor. That because time spent in there, brushy, 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 brush, that's going to give you mud.
And then we had some people ask, what brand of watercolor do you like? What paper do you like? And what type of brand of the journal are you using?
This is really nice. It's called a Moleskine. Mole. Somebody could put this in the chat. Can you do that, Lexi?
Yes, I will
Okay.
look that up
So
for us.
it's a Moleskine, it's very fancy brand of watercolor paper, sketchbook. Um, there are different sizes and be careful because there's different types of paper. There's writing paper for Moleskine and there's I don't know what else, but I think it's the pink label that is specifically the watercolor label. And it's it's got a nice tooth to it. Sometimes I find it almost maybe a little bit too oily almost, but I like it a lot. What I like the best is 140-pound cold pressed Arches paper. I have not been able to find a really good small sketchbook with 140-pound cold press Arches paper. So I find reasonable facsimiles or I buy sheets, large sheets, 22 by 30, full-size sheets of watercolor. And I also find others that I really like. This is just a sketchbook that I got at the National Gallery of Art. It's got Andrew Wyeth's painting on the front. And this is what I used for that Morongo Canyon desert flower yesterday. I really do like this paper a lot. That's just with a tree with just wash and probably the Lamy pen. Most of the time when I'm just going off for an afternoon, and I know I'm going to be in places where other people are off hiking and I want to sit and sketch, I'll bring a small, just the Lamy and this little bottle of water and one brush. This is all I need right here. And a nice notebook.
And I think there's a couple questions. If you could just reiterate again the brand of the waterproof pens.
Yes, the
Someone was,
waterproof one that I like. Oh, now again, um, this is a disposable marker. Any disposable marker like Sharpie or Pitt pen, Pitt pen, or Sharpies, Pitt pens, Micron, Micron. Those are all waterproof disposable markers. When they run out, you throw them away. This one I really like more than Micron. It's called Professional Waterproof Technical Pen. Professional Waterproof Technical Pen. Oh, the brand is Accurite. Accurate. Accurate. Professional Waterproof Technical Pen. All these are waterproof. These are waterproof, meaning you can draw and then you can do watercolor and it won't smudge. The only ones that I have here that are non-waterproof that you can actually use the ink by pulling it out with the brush are the Lammies here. And there are lots of other ones, I'm sure. I just like these right now.
wonderful. Well, I think that this has been an absolutely amazing course today. I know we're starting to get to the end of our time, so I just want to make sure that we're able to talk about a few things. I just added
Sure.
into our chat Emily's next program with us, which is in person. It's called the Venice Sketchbook, Capture the Elegance with Ink and Watercolor. So that's in the chat if you'd like to follow that through. I'm also right now apologize as I do some more copy and paste, adding Emily's links again for her website and her Instagram, as well as her or our website. So go ahead, follow all those links. We are so thankful for Emily being here today. Again, this is just a sample, but please contact us if you'd like to take a longer class. And thank you, Emily, for giving
You're very welcome. It was fun.
details. Yeah, we had a wonderful time today. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you as we continue this week. And if you have any questions for Emily as we're exiting, please go ahead. You can put yourself off mute if there's something pressing you'd like
Yep,
to
I'm
know.
here. I'm
Yep.
here. I'm not going off yet.
I have a
Say,
question. I
Go.
have a question. You said you prepare the paper for your sketches from a train by doing watercolor washes before
Right.
you know what's going to land on it. So how do you
Yes.
decide where to put these colored washes if you don't know what's going to be going on the page?
Well, I'll give you just a little bit of a I'll just show you because I don't care. I don't care as much about color as maybe I should. I mean, I love color, but I'm just saying that when I make those squares, um, okay, there it is. When I make the squares, sometimes I'll even put some tape down, some painter's tape here, and I just keep it very, very wet, just to give myself a field, keep it wet and keep it moving, because if I don't want it to dry, I want it to be like, a gradation, like a wash. Okay, so and then that becomes where I'm going to do my sketch.
Mhm.
That becomes my field, and then everything I draw, whether it's rooftops or mountains or poles or wires or whatever, then this becomes the background.
Okay.
Yep. So it doesn't matter to me. I don't care that as much about the color as I do about the transparency of the little
Mhm.
colorful patch that I'm making.
Okay. Could you show the sketch again, please? And I appreciate.
The one that I did for the
Yeah,
demo.
yeah,
Oh,
one that you just did. Yeah. Let's see if I can get it. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely.
thank you.
Perfect. Is there anyone else? I know we're a little over time, but obviously we want to make sure you get your questions out. Is there anyone that has any final questions that they'd like to ask? My email was on the links for today. So if you have any other questions that come your way, please go ahead and email me and I'll send them on to Emily and we'll get you your answers.
Mhm.
But
Absolutely.
regardless, everyone, thank you so much for being here. Can't wait to see you in our next samples. And again, a huge thank you to Emily Passman for this wonderful time we spent
You're
together.
very welcome. See some of you in Italia. Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.
Sure. Thank you.